A warm welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for taking time out your day to do this session with us. It's going to be really interesting, and we've got a fabulous lineup of speakers. If I can ask anybody as they come into the room, if they're able to put themselves on mute, if you're not already, that would be terrific. It just stops us getting any feedback. And I will introduce myself, and then we will pass on to our series of speakers that we have for today. If there's anything you'd like to raise, we have the chat box available, and we'll be keeping an eye on that throughout, and so you can raise any questions and whatnot, although there should be time for direct questions and a bit of a chat later on. But if you raise it in the chat, it can make sure that we will actually make sure we get to that point. So my name's Vicky Unite. I'm the Chief Executive of Perthshire Chamber of Commerce, been enrolled for about 15 years now. And we've been involved with the Circular Tayside project for about 3 or 4 years now. And we've been delivering it latterly with our great Circular Tayside manager, Vaso Macri, who is talking to us today, and she's pulled today's event together for us. So thank you very much, Vaso. We've got a couple of topics to go over today, and obviously it's focusing in on the circular construction, and a particular focus project is the Perth West project. So within this project, it's a massive piece of investment, massive piece of infrastructure and development that we've got going on, and there are a lot of circular opportunities to be had. So we're going to go through some of the potential therein just now. So my name's Vicky Unite, as I said. I'm going to pass on. We have next up, we have Nick Ribbons from Zero Waste Scotland, who should be joining us. If he's not here, we will just do the things in a different order. We have Jordan. Oh, you're fabulous. I'm relieved and delighted. That's great. And then we have Nathan and Charlie from the innovation at the Pallet Loop. And then we have Vaso Macri at Circular Tayside, and we have Jorrit from Metabolic. So I shall pass over. Vaso, am I okay just to pass over to Nick?
Yeah, just pass over to you.
Fabulous. Lovely. I'll mute myself and I'll keep an eye on the chat box and the waiting room. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vicky. Okay, I will. I'm sorry about the late entry there, Vaso. I hope it didn't cause too much anxiety. I'll share my screen and we will start things off. Can everybody see this? There we go. Right, great. So my name is Nick Ribbons, and I am the sector manager for construction for Zero Waste Scotland. And what we really are set out to do with our construction programme is try and embed circularity within the Scottish built environment. And what that means is valuing resources and ensuring that nothing is wasted, and understanding how we can do that by looking at the sort of principles of circular construction and seeing where we can apply them. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not too sure about the level of understanding, so I'm just going to briefly go through circularity and circular economy, and then I've got a few examples, and I don't have much time, so I'll probably go through quite quickly. So we have a current understanding of the economy, which is the current system of how the economy works is that we extract resources from the ground or from the natural environment, and we change them, we sell them, we use them, and ultimately dispose of them, and they end up as waste. And in each of these links in the chain, there are emissions that are released as a result of that activity. And for a while, we've really understood our impact as the emissions that arise from the use part of this puzzle. But we know it's much wider than that. And when you include the emissions, we call them the embodied emissions of these products, what we find is their carbon footprint gets much, much bigger. and that's problematic. In the context of sort of why we're looking at the construction sector, the construction sector accounts for 50% of the UK's resource use, and it's about the same for Scotland, and 40% of the country's total emissions when you consider these sort of wider embodied carbon emissions. And then at a national scale in Scotland, around 50% of our waste on an annual basis comes from the construction sector. So, and while a large proportion of that is classed as recycled, actually, if that doesn't need to happen in the first place, then we're procuring a lot of materials and things like that we don't need to. So there's a lot of money being wasted there as well. And this is an industry that accounts for about 10% of our GVA in Scotland, and that actually around the same for GDP, and about 1 in 10 people work in it. So it's a hugely important sector, both environmentally and socioeconomically. And we can see here that I don't know if you can make, what I'll do is reduce this, and you can see that CO2 levels are continually spiking, and we change this on an annual basis. And that is resulting in sort of extreme weather events, and it's increasingly having an impact on not only the environment, our built environment, but the environment that we get materials from. And this is also impacting the sort of cost and the volatility of how much things cost. And I said earlier that around 50% of the materials that we use go into the built environment, and actually around 70% of those are imported from the Europe or the rest of the world. So this dependency, both from small businesses and large ones on a global supply chain, is really unsustainable, and it puts us at risk. And the circular economy is one of these things that we can use to insulate ourselves against that risk. But the current model, the way things are built and designed that I talked about, so the way things end up as waste at the end of their life, you can see here, this is the same applies for buildings. So at the end of their lives, basically the best thing that we can do with them within the short sort of timeframes that we have is to demolish them. And you can see that almost everything that comes out of this process is damaged and therefore is devalued. And as a result of having the value stripped away from it, there's not much you can do with it. Best case, the wood might be chipped and burned, metals may be stripped out, bricks, if they don't end up as landfill, might be crushed and used as secondary aggregate, which is good. I should note that, or you should note that sort of this might get used for capping of landfill or backfilling of quarries, which counts as recycling, but it's really sort of downcycling. So the circular economy represents this way of combating this, where we design things so that they can be readily repaired, reused and refurbished. And we're really curving those long supply chains so that the economy becomes circular, and that we can capture that value that's currently hemorrhaging out of it. So at Zero Waste Scotland, we have sort of looked at all of the principles of circular economy, and I should say that there's a lot of crossover between these. So you know, a lot of projects that I'm going to show you will sort of probably exhibit more than one, but this is generally what we see as being the sort of principles of circular economy within construction. And there are other sort of models which have fewer and are largely can address the same issues. I should note David Cheshire's book, Building Revolutions, which has, I think, 5. So I'm not going to give you examples of all of these. What I'll do is just show you some examples which give you a few. I thought this was a really nice visual model in the here, which shows the building layers, which represents. You can see the logo here in the material recoverability, and this is about an understanding that each part of the building isn't just one entity, but actually it's a composition of lots of different layers. And these layers each have different lifespans. And if you have approached the design with that understanding, then you can create a building in which these layers can be replaced and updated in ways in which that you don't disrupt the building fabric and you don't disrupt the residents, but you can take these and you can extract the materials undamaged, and then you can repurpose them for a second life and even a third life, or and so on. And then you're sort of propelling this circular scenario. This is a really good thing. This is a bit of an aspirational example, but I quite often show this slide and say this is a project from Arup, and the link is here. So what stage is this project at? Is it the end or is it the beginning of a project? And the idea is that it's both, that you can create buildings with demountable fixtures and fittings, not using nails and glues and adhesives and bonds and that sort of thing. And this is the People's Pavilion, and then they built it in exactly that way. So it's fully demountable. And I believe that there's lots of materials here that are sort of borrowed and also tagged. So also taking advantage of things like materials passports, attaching data to each material, so that at the end of its life, like I showed in that the building in layers approach, you can not only take the materials out, but you can get precise data on their specifications, or when they were installed, what they're made of, this sort of thing. And then that creates this value that that might normally be lost in buildings where that's not available. So this is one example that we have. And if I run out of time, this slide deck will be made available, and there are also speakers notes which probably more accurately convey what
the speaker's not working very well.
Oh, sorry. So this is Merkinch Primary School, constructed from cross timber. So it's a sort of 3-story building, which is almost entirely constructed from cross-laminate timber. So timber, being a natural material, is readily available, and there's huge projects underway to really create a more vibrant timber industry in Scotland, because currently a lot of the timber we do import, and we acknowledge that that's an issue. But one of the great things about timber, not only is its structural properties, it's very strong, but when you use it in this way, engineer it, you can see in the small corner, just try and go back, that cross-laminate timber is lots of smaller bits of timber that are glued in sort of, I think the term is perpendicular to each other, or sort of at right angles, and sandwiched together using glue, or sometimes doweling and different techniques, and it creates this ultra strong timber that can be used for structural purposes, as you can see here. And timber is, when trees grow, they obviously suck carbon out of the air, and they use it in their structure. They sort of sequester it for however long this building will be there. Sort of maybe 40 years, maybe 60, maybe longer. So it's a really good material to use in that respect. It's also, this was also used BIM, so there was digital modeling, and doing that also as well as bringing teams together, it produces 3D models, which can be used to prevent clash detection, so reducing waste at the same time. This is, I think, near Inverness. And then the Cairngorms National Park headquarters. This is another great example of timber use. But in here, one of the things they've done, as well as sort of appending it, having it as a sort of, I guess, an annex to the existing building, but they've also created an indoor space you can't see here, but it's created with partitions so that the indoor space can be modulated and used for different purposes and different functions. And this is another principle of circularity, to be able to have an indoor space which is considerate of the flexible needs of the residents, and they might be change on a day-to-day basis, such as there's need for meeting rooms or smaller office areas, or they might change over time depending on the function of the building and the needs of the users. So that's a really interesting thing to understand when you're designing buildings, but also, looking here, and we can see the green roof, which is a sort of a really cool ecological feature. And then the engine shed is another one near Stirling, and this is one where the use of natural materials was extended to the stone repair on the gable ends, where they used stone which was taken and matched from a disused railway bridge nearby. And they also used sheep's wool insulation. And it's also got a modular internal. You can see here the lecture theatre, which has a door that moves up. So the whole space can be used, or it can be used as a sort of more enclosed, intimate feature. The external is also clad in zinc, which arguably not always the most environmental option, but it is fully recyclable and will last for sort of a long, long time. Can I ask, Beso, how I'm doing for time? Is that us?
If you can start wrapping up, it would be great. Thanks, Nick.
Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll just flick through these other ones. These are other examples of circularity in sort of the Scottish built environment. This is a structure on Butte, which is fully recycled materials. And we also have another example of the Ripple Retreat near Loch Lomond. So you can look at all of these. There's a few more examples, and I've outlined the benefits here, which are sort of intuitive. You probably understand a lot of these, but it's all there for you to sort of go over. And I'm also happy to open the floor to any questions at the end of this about the sort of the application of these principles. I'll stop there.
That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much, Nick.
Thank you.
And I always love seeing the pictures from the buildings you show. They just look beautiful, absolutely stunning. And hearing that they're with circular economy practices, it just makes them even more special. Our next speaker for today is Jorit. Jorit is a sustainability consultant for Metabolic, and he will present to us the Perth Circular Scan. So, Jorit, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Faso, and thanks for that introduction, Nick. That also meant I could skip some slides, so I should be fairly quickly. And fun to see the People's Pavilion. That is actually a building that is built in the town I grew up in, so that's always fun to see. Let's see if I can share my screen. Is this working? I see some heads nodding, so I think that's a yes. All right. Yes, my name is Jorit van Voordonk. I work at Metabolic. We are a consultancy focused on circular economy, of which a large part of the work we also do is in the built environment and in circular construction. This project I'm talking to you about now is a circular scan of the Perth and Kinross region. It's commissioned by Zero Waste Scotland, and we're closely working together with the Perth and Kinross Council, of course, which I also saw Sheila is in the room, so that's good to see you too. I'll just give a brief overview of the project to you all. So kind of the idea of the project is to give a current state analysis of all the materials going in and out of the region. As Nick said, if we are going to change from this kind of linear economy of extracting resources, using them, and throwing them away to a more circular system, we always strongly believe that the start should be to understand what's actually going in and out of that economy and thus of a region, to actually know how much material there is, what the impacts are, and also where opportunities arise to make the system more circular. So what we'll do in this project is really a first phase as we see it. So we'll do something that's called a material flow analysis of the regional built environment. For now, we'll focus on the Perth and Kinross area. There have been performed studies before, much more on a national level, I think also from Zero Waste Scotland. But the aim of this project is really to get a bit more of a fine-grained analysis of all the waste in the region, all the materials going in, and also how those are treated. And of course, in regards to the construction sector, also have a good idea of what is the kind of amount of building materials we would need in the coming years. Also in regards to the Perth West project and what kind of residual flows are available that are now potentially wasted. Maybe there is large projects in the area that are being demolished, and maybe we can reuse some of those materials in new developments as well. And this project is really aimed at getting a first overview, a first scan of those materials, also of other sectors than the construction sector, but then to identify kind of what are the highest impact opportunities that arise from that. So here I've quickly posted a picture of a different scan we did. We just started the project, so I can't show you the one for Perth and Kinross yet. But like what you see in these is kind of like what is the energy, materials, and water flowing into a region. In this case, the city of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and what kind of the waste that are emerging from that, and how are those then treated? Which portion of that is recycled, which portion is incinerated, and what goes to landfill? And as you can see, always the construction sector is a very large portion of the total impact in the region. Nick already showed you the numbers, but if we can start reusing some of those construction materials, or choose actually other materials that have a longer lifetime and can be reused at the highest possible value, we make a really big impact in the whole region as a whole. And of course, like the end goal of this first stage of this circular scan is to get a good understanding of what will be the hotspots and opportunities. And as we know, circular construction and construction as a sector is always one of the highest impact sectors. This, although the numbers are not there yet, we know this is going to be one of the hotspots and also opportunities. So what can we help each other with? We will be doing this study, and I think we'll also be reaching out to some of you maybe to get a bit better insight. At the moment, we are approaching all the waste management companies in the region to get a good overview of all the waste they are processing and how it is treated. So to get a good overview of that, but also to get good insight in regional opportunities. If we see this as kind of a first scan and a first kind of like map on which we can identify the best opportunities. You guys know much better what is happening in the region and what kind of regional opportunities in the Perth and Kinross region would be of particular interest. That can be wood or CLT building, that can be concrete recycling or circular concrete plants, that can be urban mining, that can be more on the digital side, as Nick was also alluding to, BIM models. So these are kind of the insights and the hotspots we also want to identify in this project. But I would also be very interested in the Q&A at the end if there's any needs you guys would would have from this project and what we could do to bring this, get this better overview of all the material flows in the region. That was me for short. If there's anything, always feel free to reach out, because I think the best opportunities and the best data always arises from having contact with the main stakeholders in the region. So yeah, happy to share and talk further.
That was fantastic, Jory. Thank you so much. The tool is really interesting, and I love how interactive it is. You can just see it. It's not pages and pages of reports. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat and we will attend to them at the end of this meeting. Also, I will ask our speakers to share with you their contact details so that you can contact them about anything whenever you want. And our next speaker for today, well, speakers are Nathan and Charlie from the Pallet Loop. So this is a very innovative circular business model operating in the construction supply chain, and they deal with pallets, and they're going to go over how they manage to fit this circular business model with their product offering. So Nathan or Charlie, I don't know who's going to go first.
Can you hear me? That's always a good start.
Yes.
That's great. That's great. Now the Charlie's driving the slides, so he's in control in that regard. My name's Nathan from Pallet Loop, and the benefit of going third as a speaker is that you know you're in the right room on the right forum. So thanks to the guys that went before. Clearly, circular economy and avoidable waste are two big topics here. So hopefully we can add a bit to the discussion. Pallet Loop, in fact, comes in a little bit earlier in the process, in that our model is a recovery, repair and reuse system aimed at the construction sector. And essentially that's how you get your goods and materials to the site. So before you've even broken ground, you are going to need to call upon the various manufacturers to get your materials onto site before these fantastic builds begin to take shape. What does that look like in the context of the UK, and what's been our motivation? Well, the business is some 18 months old, and it's the idea of our CEO, a chap called Paul Lewis, and his brother Ryan, who 4 years ago sold to a Scottish company actually called Scott Pallets. And when Paul sold his business, they were the UK's largest manufacturer and distributor of pallets in the United Kingdom. Paul, however, had a bit of an itch to scratch, and that was the fact that one glaring observation was that there are some 18 million pallets used annually to service construction and move these goods to and from, with less than 10% of those ever being reused, which is phenomenal amount of waste. And you could argue something of an oversight, because construction is starting to turn the wheels, and construction is starting to do its bit, and we all realize that net carbon zero ambitions can only be realized through working together. But the process starts long before that, in our opinion, and those 18 million pallets are akin to some 6,000 acres harvested annually, and that's comprised across some 500 plus pallet specifications. So you can imagine there is complexity within the system. There is a lack of standardization, and there is a legacy that as new procurement guys come into businesses and new people come on board, they design a new pallet, and that becomes the pallet of the moment, and it just adds to this mountain of assets. The reality being as well that up to 10% of construction waste stream is also derived from pallets. So there is this massive inefficiency, and with that inefficiency comes massive waste, where this timber could be repurposed to some of the things that Nick was talking about, and we could look to have a far more streamlined and in fact a safer supply chain, where you could consolidate, and we have done with our designs, which Charlie will come on to shortly. But we've taken what is in excess of 5,000 circa 5,000 pallet specifications at last count across the vastness of the industry, and we're quietly confident we can switch that into about 6 or 7, and you can, from an operating perspective, you can just begin to imagine the efficiencies that would offer your business. And then standardization comes with that safety, and where our pallets are at the front end going to cost us more to produce, we're happy to make that investment because we can invest that extra monies into a safer, more robust pallet, because it's in our interest that they go through the supply chain. They're no more linear, they're now circular. They come back to us, we repair them, and then we reissue them. And so the sort of circular economy is born, and we're saving something akin to 75% timber usage. But the million-dollar question, which I'm sure Charlie will elaborate on now, is how does that work? It's a deposit-based system, which may raise an eyebrow around the room, but using a deposit-based system, we can drive behaviour change and indeed accountability, where the polluter, if you want to call them that, is responsible for the ownership and the repatriation and reuse of that pallet. So Charlie will walk you through how that system works within the supply chain.
Yeah, so thanks, Nathan. So yeah, so like I say, the key thing here for the construction sector is the saving in waste, and like so that 10% figure that excludes, obviously we're not talking about construction and excavation waste, demolition and excavation waste. That's a separate thing. But where we talk about construction waste, that's the stuff that goes away in a skip, and these pallets are forming around 10% of that waste stream from the studies that we've done with our contractors. And from my background is construction. I've spent 30 years working for major contractors and now working with Pallet Loop to help them launch this. So the way it works, the system, we've obviously got Pallet Loop. We manufacture the pallets, and our partners, Scott Pallets, manufacture the pallets. We will then issue those pallets to our manufacturers, partners. As part of that issue, they are charged an issue fee, which is a one-off fee for that pallet to be used, and then a deposit. Which at the moment stands at £15. That deposit follows that pallet every step of its journey. So the manufacturer makes its product, whatever that may be, puts it on our pallet, sends that material to, say, a merchant or another type of retailer. They will charge them for the materials and then charge a £15 deposit on that as well. That means that manufacturer has now got his deposit back. So he's, for that pallet is now cost neutral to him apart from his issue fee. The merchant will then pass those materials on to a trade contractor generally on a site, who again, they will then charge that £15 deposit for that pallet, and obviously the cost of the materials on top. That pallet may be then taken to the principal contractor site, or it may be delivered directly to that principal contractor, and the materials are used, and that pallet is then stored in some way on that site or returned. So there's two ways you can do it. The trade contractor themselves can remove the pallet from site and take it back to the merchant or retailer and receive his £15 deposit back, and then that merchant retailer then calls us up and we go and pick it up for him and we pay the deposit back to them. The other option though is if the pallets are left on site and the trade contractor doesn't manage their pallets in the way that we'd like them to, then Pallet Loop will actually go to the site and actually pick them up from that main contractor, and we will then refund the deposit to the main contractor. So whatever way, if people manage their pallets correctly, the only cost is that issue fee up front to the manufacturer. There are no other costs involved. All the other costs are, all the other money movements are cost neutral if the pallet is managed. So that's the situation. That's how it works. Just to give you an idea on how what the pallets look like, there's a picture of one of our two-way entry pallets there. As you can see, they're a lot more robust than a standard pallet that you probably find in your skips at the moment. That's the sort of pallets that your materials are probably turning up on at the moment. You can see there the difference between the pallets and how much more robust the Loop pallet is there. The graph on the right gives you information give an outline of what sort of refunds you'd be getting if you were a contractor. So this is if a contractor has to refund those, return those pallets back to Loop. We do charge a collection fee for that, but that's offset against the pallet refund. So you can see there that obviously it starts off, if there's only 2 or 3 pallets to collect, there will be a cost. But that break-even point for Loop pallets is 7 pallets. And that's for a maximum of 50 pallets or part thereof. The advantage of Pallet Loop as well is that while we're collecting the Loop pallets, we'll also collect those other white pallets that were previously single use. So we will take them away as well. We will work with our partner Scott Pallets, who will repair those and for the time being, at least, put them back into the supply chain. Obviously, what we're hoping is that over time, we'll replace those 18 million single-use pallets with loop pallets, and there won't be that single-use pallet market, is what we're hoping for at some point in the future. So just to give you some information on the pallet specification, I don't know if you want to cover this, Nathan, because you've been involved in some of the testing on this, but
yeah, where I don't profess to be as technical as Paul and the guys and our operations guy Steve Ottaway, who had a previous background in Czech, if anyone knows the blue pallet business, which is FMCG focused. But those guys have worked tirelessly in designing a suite of, I say, up to 6 pallets. This is an example here of the 12 by 1000 entry, two-way entry rather, and that pallet. Don't take our word for it, I think is the catchphrase here, because we then sent them to Virginia Tech, a testing facility in Florida, where those pallets now carry with them the accreditation, which is a world first, that they are safer or up to 100 times safer in terms of grab handling. So the big hydraulic lifts that you will see the likes of Travis Perkins offloading materials and goods onto sites with, amazingly, there was never an accreditation or a test certificate for the pallet that sat under those goods. The HIABs are incredibly capable, but the pallet underneath had never been tested. So we sent away the pallets and continue to send them away as new specifications are drawn up. But I think the bottom line is that what we've managed to do is create a pallet that is widely used across the entire sector. But at the moment, there are various iterations. But that size and specification will absorb a huge amount of the material goods that are being sent by manufacturers. It's considerably safer by design and more robust. And what that means is it no longer has that single trip status. And at the end of its lifespan, we can repatriate, we can repair, and we can reissue. And that's why we're prepared at the front end to put more money into the design and development of these pallets. As a ballpark figure, we may have a customer, a manufacturer at the moment, paying upwards of £7, £8, £9 per unit. This particular pallet you're looking at here will be circa £5.5, £6. So there is even a commercial advantage. And I have to stress that that's probably the third point on the agenda when we're talking to clients, because it's more about health and safety, sustainability, their CSR and similar. But nonetheless, we all, the reality is that the accountants and the commercial guys in all of these businesses will have an eye on the numbers. But the numbers, they work in favour of every person within that supply chain. Because even when you get down to the builders and the tier 2 users, the reality is that there is a cost associated with managing your waste stream. And unfortunately, what would often happen is skips would be called in because there would be accumulation of pallets, and they would just be thrown in rather ad hoc at sort of £250 a unit or whatever a skip may cost at the moment. I think that's a fairly rounded figure. So the pallet design, there's a lot of integrity gone into that to ensure our model sort of stands up to that reuse application.
So yeah, just to give you some of the benefits of pallet loop. Obviously, we're trying to make it as green as possible. The actual CO2 emissions of moving those pallets around, and that's just the pallets, not the materials, I must stress, is up to 70% less, because we're able to recover that pallet, and then that pallet is kept more local for its reuse phase. So generally, the materials, a lot of the vast majority of the timber that goes into these pallets is sourced in Scotland. But obviously that materials gets moved down to a lot of places around the country, and each time we send a new pallet down, that's quite a few road miles. So by keeping those pallets more local, we can reduce those CO2 emissions there. Any remaining CO2 emissions we're going to offset, and I'll touch on that in a second. But we're looking at probably a 75% reduction in timber usage at least. It depends how much reuse we can get out the pallets. Obviously, there will be repairs that will need to be made, but we're looking at a significant saving in the timber use. Obviously, all that timber will be responsibly sourced, and for UK sources, it's generally going to be FSC certified. And like I say, we get that 10% reduction in waste. You obviously got the safety side, which Nathan's discussed there around, the design is validated by Virginia Tech, so it's got safer handling. But in addition, we're looking at FORS accredited transport for deliveries to sites. So the actual vehicles that are delivering these pallets or collecting the pallets, moreover, will be FORS accredited. And obviously then you've got that leaner supply chain then, as because you've got that unified pallet design, you can maximize that distribution capacity around the country. We are looking at RFID tagged technology. We will be putting this on the pallets. It's in its infancy. Some of this technology at the moment, it's very local, but there's new RFID tag readers that can read it from a further distance away, which will help with distribution and information. And obviously, one of the key things we're offering is that fast and efficient site collection. There are some collection services at the moment, but you can wait 3 or 4 weeks for a collection. We're guaranteeing that we'll collect the pallets from construction sites within 72 hours, which is a key driver for the contractors. Just on the carbon balance, we are, like I say, what we're looking at is operating a carbon neutral business. So we've done an LCA on the pallets as they are at the moment. Obviously, these will need to be updated as we launch the pallet and we get real world data. But we're estimating at the moment that each trip of a loop pallet is around 2 kilograms of CO2 equivalent, and that's assuming an 80% return rate. And that does exclude obviously the materials, the manufacturer's materials being moved around. That's us delivering the pallet to our manufacturer partner and collecting it either from distribution centres, merchants, or construction sites. So that's what we've included in that LCA. So, taking 1 million loop trips, that works out to around 2,000 tonnes of CO2. So the way we're looking to offset that is we're working with an organisation called the Forest Canopy Foundation, which is a cooperative of a number of forest management companies around the UK. And for each, basically what we've established is that for every million trips on a loop pallet, we'll be planting around 12 hectares of forest and managing that for 25 years. So we're not just putting trees in the ground, we are actually paying towards the management of that forest, so that to a point where it actually becomes there's an income stream for the owner of that forest. So that's how we're working on that. So we're working with Forest Canopy Foundation. It's assessed by Grown in Britain. And just to finish off, really, just to show you some of the endorsements, we've been discussing this with a number of the contractors. We've got written endorsements from a number of contractors here: Kier, Bouygues, ISG, Costain, Multiplex, BAM. But we've spoke to near enough all of the top 20 contractors around the country, including people like Balfour, BT, Wilmot Dixon, and others. And all of those have been really supportive and want to work with us to see how this can be taken forward. And in addition to that, obviously got the main builders merchants on board, such as Travis Perkins, and we're also talking to others, like we mentioned Virginia Tech earlier on, but we're also working with Loughborough University. We've had discussions with Cambridge, and obviously Nick at Zero Waste Scotland there. So really good support. Everyone we spoke to has been really positive about this. Obviously there's questions that have been asked, and some of them have been quite challenging, but in the main, very, very good support for this initiative. So I think, just to leave it there, I think the only question is, are you in the loop? Is how we like to leave it.
Couldn't resist. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you very much, Charlie and Nathan. That was fantastic. Really, really great business model. Really, really innovative. And exactly what we're looking for with many of the products of the companies that we're working for, just a way to return them, be profitable without having profits linked to virgin resource extraction or waste creation. So I'm going to very briefly go over what we do in Circular Dayside, and after that we can have a Q&A. I promise I will not take long. I have practiced this presentation quite a bit. So let me just try and share my screen. There we go. So it's not going to let me have it full screen, is it? There we go. So a lot of you already know where I work and what Circular Dayside is, but I'm going to briefly go over it. Circular Dayside, it is funded by Zero Waste Scotland, and it is delivered by the local chambers of commerce. That is the Angus Chamber of Commerce and Perthshire Chamber of Commerce. And the reason for Circular Dayside is that in 2018, a report commissioned by Zero Waste Scotland showed that the local area could achieve economic benefits of about £404 million by adopting a circular economy, with the main sectors being construction and the built environment, energy infrastructure, manufacturing, and food and drink. So I joined the team in 2019, and we are operating in all this area. We used to travel in all this area, but since the COVID, we obviously do our meetings and events online. And what do we do? So we try to help local organizations transition towards circularity by using two approaches. The first one is by raising awareness on circular economy. This event is part of that, and also by helping organizations access Zero Waste Scotland support. So how do we raise awareness? We have a series of events throughout the year. We have had events on food waste, agri-waste, furniture, construction, pretty much anything that you can think of. And we're always happy to have events that are themed, that are focused on other themes. So if you have any ideas, just get in touch. Also, since the beginning of the lockdown, we have started recording our events, so you can find past events on our page. We also have our Be Inspired page, where we add local organizations that have circular elements in their product or operations. They are from micro enterprises all the way to bigger enterprises like Fairmont Hotel and Bonner Yarns and other bigger manufacturers. So if you have any circular elements, just get in touch and we will be very happy to add you on our Be Inspired, but also on our circular Tayside map. That is just an area of the just a map of the local area with entries from our Be Inspired and our circular Tayside ambassadors, that are the icons in green, that are currently sitting at about 45. So our circular Tayside ambassadors are just people from academia, local authorities, local businesses that are really motivated about circularity, and they have kindly agreed to help us deliver this project. We hold quarterly meetings and we talk to them about our plans for the next quarter, and they tell us if it's a good idea or not for their sector. So they are a fantastic resource and we could not have done this without them. We had a chat with Circular Tayside series, just short interviews with people that have circular organizations. You can find it on our website. And we also have learning resources, some funding resources on the website. Just go around and take a look. We're always happy to promote more the local circularity, so just get in touch. I also mentioned that we help organizations access Zero Waste Scotland support. So the way that we usually start is by having a one-to-one meeting with myself. We discuss your project and your business, and then we try to see if there is more circular alternatives to your business model or to your product. Once a business is ready, we were very happy to refer to Zero Waste Scotland sectoral experts, one of which is Nick Ribbons, that presented with us today. The way that we support businesses in circular Tayside before we refer to Zero Waste Scotland is by either taking them through the circular business canvas. That is like a business canvas, but has additional fields for natural, technical, and energy resources. And here we map out what resources you're using to deliver your key activities. But also, and most importantly for me, we have the next use box over here that we identify what is the end of life scenario for your product. And we try to find alternatives to that according to the waste hierarchy. So going over this canvas, we just come up with ideas on how to reduce your waste, reduce the use of resources, and then some action points. Usually this canvas takes about an hour. For much larger organizations like the Dundee Botanics, it can take up to 6 hours, but that is an exception. So if you ever want to go over this and map out what you have and what you can reduce, just let me know. The other tool that we use is the Innovation Canvas from the Knowledge Transfer Network. So if you have a super innovative idea and you would like to see what gaps you have in your innovation journey so far, this mapping exercise allows us to see where the gaps are and also give some really useful tools in order to fill those gaps. If after all that, your business idea can benefit from Zero Waste Scotland support, then we refer you to sectoral experts in Zero Waste Scotland, as well as the consultancy and funding that is available from there. So that is my super fast presentation. I think that might have been a record time even for me. You'll have my contact details, so please get in touch for anything having to do with Circular Dayside, but also anything having to do with our speakers today and the fantastic presentations they gave. Let me see over here. So yes, does anyone have any questions? I think Catherine asked who is our Circular Dayside manager. Catherine, I'm the Circular Dayside manager. I manage the project.
I've just got a question, if that's okay, and it's a question for Jorrit. I was just wondering when your work was going live, and if we'd obviously be happy to promote it so you get a good response. But do you know how long, when that will open, and how long that will be open for, and how you will gather that information?
Yes, of course. We are reaching out this week actually to a number of waste management companies, including Bin Group, of which John is here as well. So that's good to connect. The project is running from now till the end of March. So I'll be collecting data the next couple of weeks and then wrapping that up and putting it in one of those material flow analyses in March.
Brilliant. It's such a valuable piece of work, isn't it? Because we all kind of work in our own wee areas, and you said it earlier, I think, that some person's waste that they're now paying a lot of money to get rid of is probably inconvenient for them, it's costly for them, it's storage and work at the very least. So unbeknown to you, someone fairly nearby, that could be their materials that they really require. And although it's quite a big piece of work to do, it'll be so worthwhile to see what our neighbours are doing and what we can use to share and access, especially because I know that we have had companies who've got issues with importing timber at the moment, and I don't know if the way you're doing that could be made into something else. I know there's obviously buildings, I guess it doesn't come much stronger and more sustainable than that, but it gives us a lot of other options, doesn't it, when things to do with supply chains are kind of a bit tricky at the moment.
No, I think you're putting that perfectly. It's also like if anybody here knows somebody we should reach out to, that's very valuable information. We are collecting now all these stakeholders here, and it's good that also some people already reached out to me privately on this call to connect. So that's really good to see. But if there's anyone we should definitely reach out to, please shoot me a message. So we'll make sure that those are included as well, because these kind of scans can be of great value, I think, to a region. They're just like as valuable as the data we are managing to collect. So the more we have, the better usable and the more valuable to become.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to how that will, and you're right, Vicky. I think if we talk about implementing the circular economy a lot, but if we are to sort of displace virgin materials with secondary materials, well, we need to know the mass balance, really. We need to know what's available to displace those materials with, or are the materials that arise from other processes, can they be used for other stuff? I mean, we in a dream world, we would totally displace our reliance on sort of imports 100%. But I think we need to realistically understand how much we can do that, and this is the first step to really doing that. And all the key stakeholders involved in the Perth West were really sort of up for this. They're all super behind it, and they sort of understand that if they want this, there's at the heart of this development is a really ambitious project that wants to be a showcase not just for the Perthshire region but for Scotland and maybe the UK as well. And so this is a really good starting point to underpin the whole thing. And there's also an ambition that this will feed into a circular strategy for maybe the wider region, definitely the development, so the individual projects that are being delivered in the development can sort of harness the sort of power of the circular economy.
You know, there's a real appetite at the moment, isn't there, to shorten down. What we have seen is that supply chain shorten right down, and there's a great appetite to sort of keep that as local as we can, you know, obviously because it stimulates and grows our own economy, but also we have more control over it. We're not so beholden to what's happening globally. And I'm thinking that there's potentially, like you say, that process. So if somebody's got a material that's in a specific state at some point and somebody else needs it at point Y in a different state, there's business opportunities here, isn't there? Where
absolutely
there's and somebody says, oh, I've got ideas, but if I know there's a glut of timber in this case lying about, that it could give them the impetus to start the business with their own, or to be the person that completes that process in between.
And that's why we have the potential for 400 million generated in the local economy from circular economy approach, just because of small businesses like that developing on those circular supply chains. John Ferguson has a question. John, we're all yours.
Thanks very much, Vaso. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the talks. Very interesting. As a person that's currently looking for buildings and interested in decarbonisation of the future, because we've got to get cracking with this, I'm really wanting to see progress in things like construct to deconstruct, so that you can, you know, have a building that becomes end of life because it's end of purpose for a particular user. It doesn't have to be knocked down and then everything becomes aggregates and waste, but we actually deconstruct and repurpose buildings. So buildings and the materials in them, you will frequently see the materials are got, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years left in them, and we're knocking buildings down. So all that embedded energy is wasted and we start again. So, you know, we almost need to kind of rethink how we construct, why we construct, what we do post-construction and post-use of that building. And that's one part of this whole question. Also, in future, a key critical element will be the cost of heating buildings. Now, you know, I'm looking to rent buildings. I'm very interested in the Perth West project. Simon Howie's got new development space in Vermont. And we're looking at, you know, issues like private grids and using waste heat to do all of these things. Finding low carbon and low cost methods of insulating buildings, even if it's retrofitted insulating, is another key issue, because that's a fundamental energy flow. Over 50% of Scottish energy is used for heating space. So industrial heating is a significant area that we can make big wins in driving down carbon. And I think so much of this has got to be driven through national policy and building standards and local planning policies. And I just think we've got to get the debate to be a wee bit more sophisticated, to get the kind of change that we need at the pace that we need it. Thank you.
Thanks, John. The pace is the difficult bit, isn't it? Discussions can happen a lot, but delivering at a specific pace is very challenging, seeing that there's so many actors, especially in the construction sector. It's quite a heavy industry. We have another question from Charlie. Are Circular Tayside advising local authorities and other construction clients on how to incorporate circularity into their projects? If so, does that include packaging materials, and do you promote organizations that can help deliver circular products? So we have talks with local authorities. However, if it's going to be quite specialized, then we refer to someone from Zero Waste Scotland, in this case, Nick Ribbons. Nick, you have your hand up. Would you like to say something?
Yes, it was just actually in response to John's point about policy, and we definitely see the national planning framework for and building regs as 2 points where we could fundamentally change the way we do things, and we recognise that there won't be it'll be difficult to have a big impact without policy change behind us, but I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg. We also need to, we're very much at the forefront of this circular economy culture shift, and there's not much empirical evidence. It's a lot of it's intuitive, and we do have some evidence from around the world, mainly the Netherlands, but other places as well. What we need to start doing is generating some solid cases and building the evidence case for circularity in the built environment, the stuff that Nathan and Charlie are doing as well is really helping that case. And if we can then collate that or create a narrative and present that in a really compelling and coherent way, not only will it cause a shift in industry, but I think as well, if we can present that to government, the case will be, they won't be able to ignore it, basically. You know, because as you said, we need to get cracking on this. This is the time for sort of theorizing and all this sort of stuff has really passed, and we need to start getting moving and learning by doing, as they say.
We do. Thank you very much, Nick. Back to the previous question that was on the chat. As I was saying, we have talks with the local authorities on the project. However, if it is something more specialized, there are people that are much more well-informed than I am in Zero Waste Scotland. So we have worked on food waste, we have worked on textiles, construction, just many different councils. So if so, does that include packaging materials, and do you promote organizations that can help deliver circular products? We do promote organizations that can help deliver circular products on our website and on our 9 social media channels. We are also very happy to do introductions where relevant. So it all starts with having a chat with myself, and then we find out what the best solution is for your company. I hope that helps. So basically everyone in the local area passes through me, and then I just kind of see whether it is Zero Waste Scotland or our map or any other thing that we do. And I think that if we don't have any more questions, Charlie.
Basil, I think there was just a quick one from Pedro in there.
Yeah, there was one around the RFID tagging, I believe, and it might be better that Nathan answers this one from our point of view, because you've been looking at some of the funding streams for this, Nathan. I don't know if you want to start on that one. Have you seen the question?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, so RFID is quite an old-fashioned technology, I gather. And speaking to the guys at Loughborough University, whoever cracks it first is going to have something that scales across industry, not just pallets and building materials. We've written a paper and we've submitted some funding to Innovate UK, and I've got it in front of me. But the bottom line is to identify and integrate a suite of sensors required to collect relevant environmental data such as temperature, air pressure, location, orientation, and stress points of the pallet. Now, achieving that is a difficult thing, and finding an affordable solution in terms of sensor technology. So we've got the Internet of Things, and there's blockchain technologies that may or may not suit, but you have to embed something that is obviously robust, relatively affordable, that doesn't blow the price of the hardware, the pallet out of the sky. But the beauty of these kind of forums, and this is where this one came about, we were talking to Kingfisher Group in their capacity as B&Q owners, and one of their suppliers is Siemens Electrium. So we've spoken to Siemens Electrium principally about them using us and not putting their materials into the B&Q network on pallet lead pallets, which there's huge desire for. But off the back of that, we then had a conversation around technology, and there's no better partner in that space than the likes of Siemens. And they acknowledge that originally costs could have been prohibitive, but there are a number of technologies out there at the moment that will allow us to create an intelligent pallet, and we can then start to, the amount of data that we could harvest from the movement of our pallets and the goods that are on those pallets, we can then start to look at damage mitigation. So it's something that we're future-proofing the build of the pallet with, but I'm not entirely sure how quickly we'll be able to nail that down, because so many people have tried. But there is appetite for it. But I'm grateful that we've got Loughborough on our side, and I'll let you know if we win that funding as well. That bid went in before Christmas.
And I think that's it's one of those things where we're going to put the technology in, but not necessarily sure how we can use it at the moment, because it's ever evolving. We mentioned it before, that RFID tagging, as far as reading the RFID tag, used to be quite a you had to be very close to that tag to read it, but there's new technology now that means you can read that tag from further and further distance. So it could be, it goes through an arch and it can read all the tags on a lorry is the sort of technology that they're talking about at the moment, which we might be able to, pick up on. And that might be something that we could then use with some of our partners. Maybe it's our, our materials manufacturer partners or our materials distributor partners, people like the Travis Perkins of this world, where they can then know what pallets are actually on site with what, and who purchased that, which contractor purchased that, so we can link the pallet to the manufacturer, to the holder at the moment. So there's things like that we might be able to do in the future, but we're just not over sure yet. We're looking at all options.
Lovely. John, question from John, do we see a growing transition to the use of plastic pallets, great use of recycled plastics, perhaps saving wood for other more valuable uses as wood supply chain is under pressure from biomass fuel?
From our point of view, no. The issue with the issue with plastic pallets is they're not easily repairable. Yes, they use a recycled material, but they're generally molded, and once they're damaged, they then have to go back into a process to be remolded into a new pallet. The advantage with timber is that it does manage the stresses a lot better. It's impact resistant as far as the stresses that timber pallet goes on. And if one of those slats does get broken, we just replace the one slat rather than the whole pallet. So from our point of view, no, we're looking at timber. The pallet market, we've calculated at the moment that those 18 million construction pallets probably use around 500,000 cubic meters of timber, mainly from Scotland. We'd like to obviously reduce that amount for our pallets. So, like you said, we want to reduce that by about 75% is our aim. So that material then can then be used in construction. The issue is that the timber that pallets use is generally outside of the log. And actually that is quite a good material for use as CLT that Nick was talking about, a lot of the buildings. And actually there's some studies being done at Napier University looking at that and how they could use, and the test panels they constructed were actually constructed using pallet wood. So that's something we're hoping where we can reduce the amount of timber, that timber can then be used for that CLT market going forward maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I just add to that, Vasu. I mean, I think that's a good explanation of a circular economy system. But I would say to Leslie that the point of plastic pallets is that their life cycling use. The number of cycles out of the pallet is significantly higher than with wood. That you can't fix them, but you just simply chip them and put them back into a pallet machine. So it's an endlessly, recyclable kind of loop of use of material. And I have nothing against wooden pallets. I find them particularly handy for making compost units and such like in the allotment. But we're used to. I'm not saying that wooden pallets are bad. I'm simply saying that there will be a transition. For a range of reasons, including hygiene, into the use of plastic pallets. But also, we have a plastic crisis. So we've got to think across materials here. We've got a plastics crisis, and we need to start finding markets for the use of plastics.
For the existing plastics.
Yeah.
John, you're absolutely right, and this is something that I've been saying a lot. Unless you have a life cycle analysis of the product, you can't be sure that one alternative is better from the other. It needs a holistic approach.
It does. Yeah. We need both. We need both, but I think plastic pallets will grow in use in time.
You will. Thank you, John. And Charlie, does anyone have any other questions? Okay, lovely. Well, then I would like to thank you very much. This has been a fantastic session, and thank you very much to our speakers and to our attendees for the fantastic questions they posed. I will be uploading this recording on our website and social media if anyone wants to go back. And please let me know if you would like, I'm going to also, if it's okay with our speakers, I'm going to send your contact details to everyone that attended with the wrap up. So thank you very much, everyone. And we will see you in our next event, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vasu. Thanks, Vicky. Take care of yourselves, everybody.
Thanks, Vicky. Really good.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting.
Bye-bye. See you again soon.